Good morning. This is the Blaine's World Podcast, where conversations are worth hearing and seeing. You can watch each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And for more information on past episodes, you can check my website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, coming to you from my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and uplifting stories about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and across the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce two folks from the Burke Theater Guild. They are Phyllis Garrison, Executive Director, and also Kelly Taylor, who's the Artistic Director. And folks, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. Okay, give them a big wave. There you go. Okay, and that is Phyllis and Kelly. And what I'd like to mention is I know a little bit about Phyllis, and I spoke to her in the past. She's the founder and executive director of the community theater called the Burke Theater Guild. And before I mention anything more about her, I'd like to turn also to Kelly. And Kelly, you're the artistic director. But before we talk about the present role, can I ask you in terms of theater, were you always interested in theater as a kid?
Yes, yes. When I was a little girl, I used to direct my Barbies in elaborate stage productions of dramas of my own devising. So I have always, from childhood, been interested in theater.
Very cool. Did you ever act or direct beyond that yourself?
Direct myself?
Yeah, direct other people. Act. Were you ever in plays yourself or direct plays as a kid?
Yes, I used to direct my cousins. We would do dramatic interpretation of jokes uh, on my grandmother's porch, which my parents seemed to enjoy. They laughed at a lot, whether we intended them to be sad and dramatic or comic. So, like I said, I was very enthusiastic from a very, very young age.
In school, were you ever in productions yourself?
Yes, my first production that I was in was when I was in the second grade. I played a witch named Cassiapa Lantimwe in a starring role. My first role was a starring role.
Okay. Do you still remember the role?
That's what I remember about it, that she had a funny name and that she was a witch. I threatened Charles Berry, if you remember Charles
I
Berry.
do remember Charles.
Very
Yes,
serious person.
very serious.
Well, I want you to keep this in mind because I don't know if I shared this in the past with you, Kelly, but I have an idea for a fundraiser for the Burke Theater Guild. And the idea would be that everybody would create their very first role. In other words, you remember, for example, that play you mentioned in second grade. Is there a videotape of that anywhere or is there a record of
Oh
it?
no, this is way, way before videotape. This 1967. And
Okay.
so,
But nobody took a motion picture of it. They didn't take a.
no,
Wouldn't that be a cool thing to do? You know, that so you can then show other people your very first role as a
that
kid.
would be hilarious. That would be
Well,
great.
well, keep that in mind very seriously. I'd be glad to offer to help the Burke Theater Guild on this if they ever want to do it as a fundraiser. But all the
I do
people,
have a picture of it. I have a Polaroid picture of it, but there's no
okay,
other record of it.
that'd be cool. But we take you as you are. So since second grade, did you do any acting or directing after that?
Yes, yes. Now, this is how I met Phyllis. I was in her musicals in high school. And after that, I majored in acting in college. And I went on to teach Reader's Theater when I became a professor. That was my career.
So you were doing this throughout your life, and so you
Hmm.
were in acting as well, acting and directing as well throughout your life.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Your two questions then. Your favorite role you ever had as an actor. What was your favorite actor role?
Um, I think that's a hard question because there's a lot of there's a lot of roles that I did and would love to do again. I think playing Amanda in The Glass
Sure.
Menagerie is one of my favorite roles. I played it when I was in college, and I would love to do it again now that I've had the life experience to understand it better. But it was wonderful. It was such an excellent cast, and we had a great experience doing that particular play. It's a wonderful play.
And aside from the upcoming play you're doing with Burke Theater Guild, do you have any dream roles you'd want to play? So aside from class menagerie, anything else you've never done but you'd like to do?
A friend of mine, Chris Pittman, and I are trying to find a venue and find funds to do Importance of Being Earnest. I would love to do Lady Bracknell
Okay.
sometime. I want to do, before I hang it all up, I want to do Lady Bracknell. That's one of my
Okay.
dreams.
So something to look forward to and expect. And I'll ask the same questions then of our other guest today, Phyllis. As a kid, were you an actor?
No, I didn't really have much opportunity to do that. We were always doing things at our elementary school and whatnot, but I can't really remember that. Uh, she mentioned 1967. That was the year I graduated from high school, and my high school teacher decided to do The King and I that year. We didn't know anything about musical theater. And so I was in the ensemble and enjoyed it very much. And after that, I took a great interest in it. But it was a few years later that I decided to try to direct some plays. My students that I taught at the high school wanted someone to do a musical, and I've done a lot of musical choral things and all that. And so they said, we want you to direct a musical. And I said, I've never directed anything in my life. And they said, well, Mrs. McCall, Maxine McCall, was my teacher that directed us in The King and I and other plays after that. They said, well, you watched her, didn't you? You just do what she did. And that's what I did. And so I directed many, many musical theater productions when I taught at East Burke High School, and Kelly was one of my students. A number of my students have gone on to do theater and music and a variety of things. And the way I will tell you, the way I feel about that is I'm just lucky that I was there when they came through, that I got to experience working with them.
Now, aside from the directing, were you doing any acting as well?
No, I don't consider myself much of an actress. I don't really enjoy acting that much. I do like directing though, but I'm getting a little bit older and it wears me out. So I'm not saying I'll never direct again, but what I have always done in the past is large major musical productions, and they're just really taxing.
Well, it's funny you say that because I oftentimes ask other people, do they prefer acting or directing? Many actors
Mm-hmm.
and directors. And what they tell
Mm-hmm.
me is kind of interesting. Almost all of them say they prefer directing because they
Mm-hmm.
don't tell the truth. They don't have to memorize lines that way.
Oh,
You
I
know,
there's no way I could possibly memorize,
well, no,
but
I get,
I just don't, I mean, I do it. When I taught my students, when I was directing their plays, I would have to act out everything for them because they
sure.
were high school kids. They weren't pros. So I'd say, do it this way. Reading aloud. Now that's my thing. I can do stories, and that's why I enjoy readers theater, because I don't have to memorize it, but I can read it with expression. But I did all of that then. But if I were actually creating the role, that's not really something that I enjoy that much.
And so
But
since you mentioned, let's talk then specifically about Burke Theater Guild, and you're the executive director, I guess.
mhm.
And so, what is Burke Theater Guild?
Well, I'll have to tell you a little story about that. I mentioned my teacher. She had directed a production of Camelot in 1971 and again in 72. And that to me was
We're losing. Excuse me a second. We're losing you a little. I can't hear you. I
maybe I
lost. Yeah, I
moved.
think so. Maybe go ahead.
Okay. So so I wanted, after I had done all those things, direct a production of Camelot and do it in honor of my teacher who had introduced me to theater. And really, the only way I could do that was to start my own community theater. So that's why I started it. But I had to do um, fundraising. We did talent shows with local students, a variety of things to raise enough money So we were doing that, and then we did the production, and then Kelly had moved back home, and I got in touch with her, and I helped me with that production, which she did. And then Kelly, being an expert in readers theater, suggested we do some short stories, put together a little group.
Wait, time out.
Yes.
Give me 1 second. I want to pause us for a second because we're losing you a little bit on the
It's probably the air conditioning. The
air conditioner came on. Maybe that's it.
Okay, is that it? But I'm sorry. Back to what we talked about. You mentioned this other person, not Kelly. Is that person still around?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, is that person part of the guild, or is that person?
No.
No.
Well, no, not really. Strong support.
Hello again. This is Blaine Greenfield with Blaine's World Podcast. Now, speaking with Phyllis Garrison and also Kelly Taylor about the Burke Theater Guild. We were talking just before about that first production, which I thought was pretty ambitious. You did Camelot, and that was pretty ambitious.
Well, that was the only thing I had planned to do. I wanted to do that because we had done it back years ago. I wanted to do that as a tribute to my teacher who had directed me in it many years ago.
Great.
That was the reason I started the theater.
Very nice.
So yes, it was ambitious. When you do these musicals, you have to do them through a school or a professional community theater. You can't just person on the street do them. You have to have an organization. So I had to do that. And once we finished that, I didn't have any other plans. But fortunately, Kelly had moved back home and she did have plans. So we got our little group together and started.
Now, this was in addition to school productions as well. This is a separate thing from the school, right?
Yes. See, I retired in 2003 from teaching. I directed my first musical production in 1976. Kelly was in mine in 78. That was her first. She was in 3 productions that we did at the high school. And so most of my high school productions were 70s and throughout the 80s. I did a few after that. And then I started the Burke Theater Guild in 2013 because that was one of my lifelong dreams. So we did it community theater production at Comma in Morganton. I think a lot of people are familiar with Comma.
Okay, we're still having some technical difficulties. We're going to work through them. But let me then turn back to Kelly. So you got involved, Kelly, at the beginning of the Burke Theater Guild, or when did you come aboard?
When she was my student at East Burke High School.
Oh, well, I was involved with the production of Camelot.
She came and helped. She was my.
But talk to me then a little bit that what makes which is so cool, the Burke Theater Guild. And so you've been in business for how many years?
Since 2013, that'd be 13 years.
Okay, pretty cool. And so again, what does the guild now do? It produces plays for Readers Theater. Is that the primary basis?
That's what we're currently doing.
Okay. And
she has written some scripts and we have performed them.
So let me turn then a little bit to Kelly in terms of the Readers Guild, since that's your background, with not so much with the Readers Guild, but Readers Theater. What is Readers Theater all about, Kelly, if you would?
Well, Readers Theater differs from the standard play that you might go to in that a standard play tries to build the sense of where you are and what's going on through character and spectacle. And Readers Theater does that through narrative. This can be a storytelling character, or it can be characters who straight up give you exposition, who tell you where you are and what's going on. And this particular production that we're working on right now, Tar Heel Ladies of the Revolution, does both. We have characters who talk to the audience directly and tell their stories, and then we have narrators who say, this happened in 1776, and we are in Morganton at this point, and that sort of thing. The difference would be, or you would use it under circumstances if you want to. The first sort of circumstance would be if you have a lot of information that you want to get across to an audience. For example, if I was doing a historical play that was set in, say, 1938, and it was in England, and it was about an upper class family, and they were worried about the rise of Hitler and his troops. In a standard play, you would communicate that by having the way you had your characters dressed and the kind of accents that they used. And you might have a radio on the set that was playing certain types of music and would have a news broadcast on, and you would have dialogue where they would say, oh, those beastly Huns, and that sort of thing. And that would take a certain amount of time to get the message across. In Reader's Theater, you just cut straight to the chase, and you would have a character say, England, 1937, the Toolsbury family are aghast at the news of, so you can get a lot of information. It's overkill if you don't have very much information, but if you have a play like the last play we did, Murder at the Courthouse, and we wanted to get across the entire history of this courthouse that we're sitting in right now, and 3 generations of the Avery family, and we wanted to do it in short order so that the audience would understand the history of the incident that we were going to relate. That was the best way to do it. We also had projections that were projected right behind us, so they could see pictures of the courthouse and pictures of the various historical figures that we were talking about. So in some ways, it was like an illustrated lecture. And then another way that Reader's Theater is used is when you want to bring attention to the beauty of the language. One of the first productions was a famous production of Dylan Thomas's A Child's Christmas in Wales, which is just a gorgeous long poem. I think Martin Sheen was involved in a revival of that very recently, maybe last winter or winter before last. And the tradition that we have to this day of having scripts on stage is supposed to have come from that production. Supposedly, we're honoring the word, the written word, but the story is that this evolved because the poet was in that production, and he was always a little inebriated, and he couldn't remember his own words without having the script on stage with him. But those are 2 examples of reasons why you might go with a Reader's Theater production. And so when in our association here with the Burke Historical Guild, this has been a perfect melding of the Reader's Theater style, because we're able to give a lot of information and just turn to the audience and go, here's your information, without it seeming strange.
Well, let me ask you this, Kelly, in that, at least in Buncombe County, in this area, Reader's Theater has kind of changed a little bit. It used to be all you'd have would be 6 people standing up front with music stand and just read it. But now more and more of them are starting to have costumes. More of them are starting to have actually some sceneries or props. Do you do any of that at all?
In this one, we are going to be in costume.
Very
in the
cool.
last one, we did it's set in the courthouse, and there were at points where we had chairs set up to indicate this is a courtroom setting. There's ways where it's a blending of just the plain we're reading to you and a theatrical presentation. So there's always been sort of a mix of the 2 styles. I like where there's a mixing of the 2 styles, where you do everything you can to engage the audience.
And what happens, at least what I've seen, is some of the Reader's Theater are so good, the performers actually come close to memorizing the dialogue, if not memorizing.
I I try to get my cast members to memorize. Sometimes it's a struggle, but I said, "Come on, you've done it so many times. Just go ahead and say it." And they're like, "Yeah, no."
Well, I will interject here in Murder in the Courthouse, which was the last production we did. There was a lot of memorization and
Yeah,
movement and acting. And then others of us did more of the narration reading.
yeah,
It was a blend, as she said. And I might want to add, we are right now in the old courthouse
yes.
in Morganton.
Mhm.
Oh, we came here, we thought it would be a discussion. This is where we do the performances. They have renovated the courtroom into a theater in our old courthouse. It's very nice and historical, and the works we have done here have involved Burke County history. So the Murder in the Courthouse play that we just mentioned, the actual shooting of the man took place in this very room. There's an X on the floor over here where he was shot, and that really added a lot to the performance. The people really got into it because our performance occurred in the spot where the actual events occurred.
It's the most unique experience that I have ever had as a writer performer, to have the opportunity to stage a historical text in the spot where it took place. It 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 gives you shivers. You know, we talked about being haunted by the spirit of Sam Fleming, the fellow who died here. And I think that we were able to, I felt like that was the goal that I had for myself, and that was one of our biggest successes, that our audience really had that sense of that moment in history from watching our performance.
Back again, and we're speaking with Phyllis Garrison and Kelly Taylor, both with the Burke Theater Guild. And we talk about the upcoming play that you're working on. It's having its, I guess, debut in a couple of weeks. And if I can ask you, if you would, Kelly, give me kind of a Reader's Digest version of the play. If you can, keep it under 3 hours. Can you keep the summary under
Okay.
3 hours? Okay.
Well, yes, it's pretty simple and straightforward. This is the story of 7 North Carolina women and their experiences during the Revolutionary War, and it's a variety of experiences. Some of these stories are funny. Some of them are tragic. There's one that's kind of a mystery. 3 of these women are Burke County women. These are all stories that I found recorded, so I didn't make them up from scratch, but these are my original takes on these traditional stories from the Revolutionary War era. They are Betsy Dowdy, Mary Slocum, Theodosia Burr, Margaret McDowell, Grace Greenlee Bowman, uh,
Sarah
Irwin.
Irwin.
Is that it?
Let me ask you, how'd you come up with the idea then for writing a play on this?
The Burke Historic Society, when we entered into a partnership with them, they gave me a folder of text that to give me an idea of the type of material that they were interested in. And one of the text was a document called Under the Laurels by Eunice Irwin.
I believe it's Irwin, this one.
And this is the story of some Burke County citizens who are buried in Quaker Meadows Cemetery. Dr. Cheryl Oxford had made it into a Reader's Theater performance. And I looked at it and I considered adapting it for our group, just doing some minor revisions like I had for Murder in the Courthouse, but it didn't seem appropriate. We didn't have the right number of people, and it wasn't really suited to this space. But I was very interested in the stories of these 3 Burke County women. I thought that was the best part of it. So I put it aside for later. And the our sponsors had talked to us and said that they were specifically looking for something to do for the America 250 celebration. So I started looking for America 250 material. And then, unrelated, I have been working on another ghost story show. And the Theodosia Burr story was in a collection of ghost stories. And it was a story that I had an idea of how to do an adaptation of it. And I went back to it, thinking about including it in the ghost story show that I'm working on. And in that same collection were of ghost stories and tall tales, North Carolina tall tales, were the Betsy Dowdy story and the Mary Slocum story. And then it occurred to me I should do a collection of women's stories of the Revolution. And that way I could integrate these three stories from the Eunice Irwin book that I liked and include these stories, these North Carolina women's stories, and make them put them all together into an integrated story about women of the Revolution rather than tall tales.
So putting it all together then, Phyllis, the Guild then is producing this play as the first time it's been produced anywhere.
Yes.
In terms of how many performers they have in the play?
What is it? Eight?
Eight.
Eight performers,
And
yes.
so talk about that. Do you have like a lot of people volunteer to be part of this, or do you have auditions, or what's the process?
Well, when we started years ago, back 2018, started doing short stories, we just gathered a group of folk that some of us knew each other. Some of the folks had been in the production of Camelot, and Kelly said, let's do some stories. So there were five of us then. Then when we did our ghost stories that Kelly put together last year, we got some of the same people, added a few. We didn't really hold auditions. We just sort of got together. We assigned the parts. And so since then, they'll one come, one go. We'll add one. One's not available. Of course, if we continue to do this, we can certainly include more people. We just had our little group and little troop of folks.
This particular production is going to be a reunion of 1, 2, 3, 4 of us who have not performed together since 1978 when we were all in
My Fair Lady.
My Fair Lady.
Back in high school.
So talk, if you would, then, Phyllis, if somebody wants to become a member of the Guild, what do they do?
We've had a few people mention it. We said when we work up something else, we'll see. We just really take it a case by case. But sure, if people want to join in, they can. We usually rehearse during the afternoon because we're all retirees. And a lot of these folks have jobs. And so we haven't figured out quite how to do that yet, but we can. Absolutely. We're delighted to have new folks.
And so if folks want to get information about the Guild, where do they turn to?
Well, we have a webpage, burketheaterguild.com. We're on Facebook, Burke Theater Guild. Right now, these particular productions, we are partnering, as Kelly mentioned, with the Historic Burke Foundation. And they have a website and an organization. They have office here at the old courthouse. People can get in touch there. And we hope that we'll continue that partnership at least for a while because it's a great working relationship. They know a lot of people. They have a lot of connections. We enjoy them. They're very supportive. So we hope this will continue for a while.
So for the upcoming production, if folks want to see it, again, could you repeat both the dates and locations? And then let's talk about how to get tickets for this, or?
Okay. It's called Tar Heel Ladies of the Revolution. It will be presented at the old courthouse the old Burke County Courthouse on the square in Morganton, July 4th at 3 p.m. and at 7 p.m., and on July 5th, Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Probably the best way to get tickets in advance would be to call the Historic Burke Foundation. I don't have that number handy right at the moment, but they are selling the tickets, and it would be easy to Google it, Historic Burke Foundation. They have a website with a number, and they'll sell you a ticket in advance, or you can show up at the door.
Okay. And so after this production coming up in the near future, do you have any plans beyond this one?
Kelly has some ideas. Yes.
Okay.
We've got planning on we're probably going to do a revival of our ghost story show at Halloween, and then there's been requests to revive Murder at the Courthouse probably next spring. The anniversary of the founding of Burke County is coming up. I think it is next spring, so we've been requested to do it for that anniversary. And then I'm working on a couple of scripts. I'm working on a script about the Frankie Silver story. That was one of the, after people saw that show, they said, "Oh, have you heard about the Frankie Silver story?" And so I'm working on a script for that now. I'm also doing research for a script about Senator Sam Ervin. So, and another ghost story show. So got lots of irons in the fire.
So it sounds like you're keeping busy.
Yes, yes.
And lastly, in terms of these upcoming scripts and stuff you're working on, do you have a particular interest in writing them or directing them or being in them? What's your primary interest?
Oh, all of them, all of the above. I love writing, and so I'm looking at directing it's a passion, but it's so exhausting, and I've not as much. I've been in these shows, but I've not gotten to do as much performing recently as I did back when I was working, and so I'd like to get back to just purely performing and not having to perform direct.
And
That'd be nice.
And this upcoming show, are you going to be one of the performers?
Yes, yes, yes. I played Margaret McDowell.
Okay. Now I'll wrap up, returning back to Phyllis. So the upcoming play, are you going to be in the play itself?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. And you'll be what role do you have?
Well, we have mostly narration roles, but those of us who are women particularly have mine is, I've forgotten her name.
Theodosia Burke.
Theodosia Burke. She's Aaron Burr's daughter. I don't know why Theodosia slipped my mind. I kept thinking Margaret and Sarah and all these other things, but that's what I'm doing.
And one last time, if you can give the website of the Burke Theater Guild, if you would please.
BurkeTheaterGuild.com.
Okay, great. One of those.
I might want to mention we also are singers. We're all choral singers, and we incorporate into it. So people have enjoyed our singing. So we hope they'll come prepared to listen to us sing some more in this production.
Anyway, sounds good. I wish you lots of luck with the upcoming production. I'd like to thank you both for being my guests on this edition of the Blaine's World podcast. Also, my producer, Kim Jones. And one of these days, we'll all bump into each other. That'd be cool. Thanks,
Absolutely.
guys.
That'd be great.
Thank you.